This is Dr. David Pomeroy, your host on ADHD Focus. I wanted to remind you that the show is not intended to be a recommendation for diagnosis or treatment of any condition for any specific person. Please consult your mental health professional or doctor managing your ADHD or mental health issues about any diagnosis or treatment-related information that you hear on the show. Refer your ADHD provider to the show if he or she would like more information. Hello, this is Dr. David Pomeroy, your host on ADHD Focus, the podcast that is out to dispel the myth information about ADHD out there and bring to you expert opinions and latest research findings and knowledge and expertise of many people in the ADHD field. Podcast can be found, of course, on Apple and Spotify and various podcast channels, as well as through my website, targetingadhd.com, and all the podcasts are easily accessible there. It's also streaming on Roku and Fire Stick. My guest today, I'm very excited to welcome Pippa Simu, who is a psychologist in the UK and has a unique story of how she got to up to the coaching psychologist that she does now after her career of 20 years as a teacher. And then when her son was diagnosed with ADHD, decided she needed to devote her time to helping him, and then got more and more involved and educated about ADHD. And Pippa, I'll let you pick up the story from there. And welcome to the show, and I'm glad you're here.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. Yes, unlike many of my other ADHD peers, I didn't get the memo in the moment when I was reading the diagnostic criteria on behalf of my son. It screamed off the page for him. I was like, this is like actually the book of his life. This is the book about him. And I didn't see myself there. But the reason I didn't see myself there is because I was using him as my measure stick and not really the criteria. You know, I just thought to myself, well, I'm not like that. I was never like that. And I don't think I appreciated that professional people could have ADHD. It seemed it was looking pretty chaotic from where I was sitting. I'd been a teacher for a long time, and I think I assumed I would have realized if that had been me. So I left teaching to support him, and I was very much soaked in the world of ADHD and attending conferences. And I worked for a charity that supported families and professionals that either lived or work with children with ADHD and autism, actually. And then there was a moment when I came across a company that have some software called QB Tech, and it was an objective measure. So, you know, ADHD assessments are typically subjective, and they are as good as the information the patient provides. So I thought, oh, that sounds great. You know, an objective measure, how helpful. And I met them, and they were very warm and friendly. And I thought we could use this in the charity. And they asked if I'd like to have a go. And I said, oh, that'd be smashing. Yes, that'd be great, because then I'll know how it feels. I'll understand it properly. And I got a really high score. A really high score, probably the highest score I've ever got in any exam, actually. Now I'm thinking about it. It was actually, it was that good. Because the software compared me to women of my age. And when we compare me to women of my age, it turns out I'm very inattentive, very impulsive, and very hyperactive. And in that moment, I was obviously, well, in a way I was kind of pleased, because it was like, oh, I'm in his team, as it turns out, you know, like that felt quite good. But my heart sank for my daughter, because she was older than him and nothing like him, but everything like me. And I had been saying all this time, don't worry, everyone's like this, with whatever she would bring me. And then I was like, oh, no, I think I've really dropped the ball. So in the moment of realizing about myself, I realized, oh my word, my daughter clearly has this too, because she was very much like me. She's older than my son. She was four school years ahead, and she was just doing her GCSEs. And she had found things difficult. But I've been telling her, everyone finds things this difficult, not realizing. And I was just like, oh my gosh, how could that be? How did that happen? Yeah. And I just wanted to give the time that I have, the time, the talent, whatever, like my energy, to really trying to reach women and girls, to help them identify it in themselves, to understand what's going on with them, to appreciate that it's a difference. And, like if we are disordered, it's largely because we are put into an environment that's not suitable for us. And that we have plenty to bring, and plenty to be proud of. And I think I'd spent decades really just berating myself. Obviously, it's all internal. No one would have known how I was speaking to myself and what I thought about myself. Our
self-talk is part of what we pick up, what we've heard as we're first being called on the carpet, as it were, for, how come you didn't do this? You're a bad boy, or you'll never amount to anything if you keep doing that. You have to try harder. How many times do I have to tell you to do this and that? That all internalizes and becomes our own self-talk.
Yeah. And my self-talk
was right.
Yeah. When I often, I say to a lot of times I find myself saying to my clients, you would never speak those words out loud to another human being. And one of the women I worked with, she said, I think I would get arrested actually if I said those things to someone else. Like they'd be like,
they certainly would be very insulted. Yes. And really yet abusive. We kind of think, here we go again.
Yeah. But, we get into that kind of pattern and oh gosh, I was just wicked to myself and kept telling myself, try harder, do more, read more, try a different planner, so many things. And obviously now knowing it doesn't make my challenges go away, but I do now understand they weren't a choice. I didn't decide to be that way,
Yes. Yeah. And that's, I think, real important to realize. And I think most people win, and adults probably, just because we've been trying to live a normal life and wondering how come it's not working for us, have this even more negative view of ourselves until we can come around to accepting I was trying hard, but it's not my fault that it didn't work.
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
Not my fault that I have ADHD. And so I can recognize, okay, that's it. And there's some things that it's helpful to me, I think. I get passionate about something and really want to, whether it's write a letter to help the patient get accommodations, or protest the denial of a medication, or any other work I'm doing outside clinical work, then I can just put all in.
And I think that's who we are. Like the answer would never be, it would never be like, I didn't care or I wasn't trying. That's never going to be what happened there, right? I'm all in. If something grabs my attention, I am all in and I will give everything. But I will get tripped up by things that everyone else finds really easy, and then tell myself I'm an idiot.
And then
I'm less like that these days. I haven't got it nailed, but I'm less like that now.
And if we recognize, okay, those are things I'm not good at, I can try and get a different planner and find some new software or whatever. And there's still times I'm going to drop the ball. So how can I delegate that?
Delegate. Absolutely, David. I like a bit of delegation for sure.
Yes. That's definitely a big part of it. But the other I guess, drawback of being so passionate and interested in things that, yeah, that'd be cool. Oh, yeah, I'll help you with that. And, oh, you need someone on the board? Yeah, that's a good cause. Okay, I'll do that. And, oh, yeah, I've got a job. And pretty soon we're overcommitted because there are 7 things we're passionate about. And there are 3 others on the list that we want to find time to do.
Yeah.
And then that can come around to, see, I'm not good enough. I can't perform. I can't keep up with what my perception of what society thinks I should be doing.
And our perception will be way off, right, David? Because look, when we actually show someone all the things we've committed to, they'll be like, dear God, that's like the work of 3 people right there. What are you doing?
Yes.
And we're like,
and
no, I can totally do this. I can. I just, maybe I won't sleep, but I can totally do this. It's nuts. And I think part of it is the impulsivity and the interest, the new shiny, oh, a new opportunity, a new avenue to go down. And I suppose that's what it is at its best. But at its most dangerous, I think it's people pleasing and trying to fit into what we think is required, is expected of a good teacher, a good wife, a good mother, a good friend, a good daughter, whatever it is. We take these things on in order to try and demonstrate
that we can do that. Yeah,
we can do it. And it is not, it's not possible. I try to now tell myself, if I say yes to a new thing, first of all, decide, okay, so what's going then? What are you not going to do in order to make space for this? And I literally also have to write in my planner. So I used to write lunch, so I would remember to eat. I changed that word now. Now it says, and it's in a different color, and it says systematic pause, where I have to it has to say that, because I otherwise, I need to stop. I need to step away from work. I need to walk. I need to process, to give myself some time. But if I don't write, I feel like it is a little bit embarrassing of a woman my age. I have to write this down to make myself do it. But
yeah. Oh, I think that's, and it may become something that's automatic enough that you can go back to just saying lunch or my time or something like that.
Yeah. But right now,
but at first, because it's not natural for us to do that, writing it out so we can see, oh yeah, that's what my focus is going to be right now.
Exactly.
So then it takes time to build that into a habit. I wanted to pick up on something on the overwhelm and how easy it is for us to do that, and how that works or works against a woman with ADHD, because I think there's so many expectations, just kind of societal expectations of a woman. You're going to keep a neat, organized home, and you're going to always be there for your children, and you're going to make cupcakes for their birthday and all those things. And of course, you're going to be attentive to your husband's needs and make dinner and plan dinners, and then also take on these other things you get interested in. There's this whole side set of expectations out there that are different for women than there are for men.
Yeah.
And how does that fit, or where do you see that in people you're working with, and how that shows up for them?
Yeah, I think at its most damaging, it shows up in clinical depression and anxiety and the repeated burnout cycle. They're just on this kind of loop, and it's almost, they feel like it's their normal, it's their normal to burn out, recover, and then start all over again. That's just, and this is, well, I suppose the least of all the damage is that it would be exhausting. But the worst that damage can bring is all kinds of mental health challenges.
And staying in shame. I'm not good enough.
Yeah. Shame is like precursor to pretty much, that's the starting point. And I think you were talking to Linda about shame. I listened to a couple of episodes, and worst case scenario is we've got some incredibly damaged women. But the worst of it is you're probably not going to see that until it can't be hidden any longer, when maybe there's an addiction, maybe they're leaning on alcohol or other substances, or they are like in proper collapse where they, maybe can't get out of bed anymore. But, they will have hit the wall. And then what might happen is a clinician might say, oh, you are clinically depressed, which quite possibly they are. But that seems to be like a reach, like maybe an easy reach for a clinician, more than to get under what's going on. And if the ADHD bit's never uncovered, then she is likely just to continue in this way. And these women are they're intelligent, that they're not stupid women. they are bright people with plenty to offer, but it's like it's like the primary objective for a woman is to fit, is to be seen to fit, and seen to perform,
be accomplished. Yes.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's what she has to do. I'm not sure where it's. I don't know. I'm wondering if there's even a biology. Actually, it was Linda said something about the biology. That's what it was. She said that there's something about the female that we are very motivated by connection and therefore approval, whereas male babies aren't so much. And I wonder if I was thinking when I was listening to that, I was thinking, oh my gosh, Linda, it could actually start there, couldn't it? Start there, like my need to connect turns into the need to fit, to be pleasing, to be acceptable to you. And so I will turn myself inside out and upside down so I look like what I think it is you thought I should look like.
Yeah. And
never let you see the cost until it's,
yes. We don't see the cost. And Deborah Brooks calls it the female ADHD tax.
Yeah.
That huge, cost, that tax isn't seen. It's a hidden part in there. And I think also that need to people please can certainly be there in men as well, because we've felt put down, that you aren't good enough, you aren't trying hard enough, you're smarter than that, you should be able to. And so, okay, if I do it perfectly, then I'm not going to get criticized, and I'm going to fit, like you say, I'm going to fit what you think I should be, or I'm going to fit what I think you think I should be in it. And that's too many.
It's crazy when you step back out of it and you look at it and you're like, wow, like how did I miss, I feel a bit like, how did I miss that? How did I not see those
so much into it?
But I was so soaked in it, I guess. And I think that the people pleasing piece is it's like a maladaptive protective measure to avoid
absolutely
the criticism and rejection, because the impact of that is so like
it hurts.
Like I've been knocked over by a bus, like takes me out of play. So I'll do anything to avoid that, literally anything. And we end up, I hope you can't hear the noise in my house right now. There's quite a lot of noise, sorry.
That's right. It's fine.
There's just, I don't know. It's very worrying for me, because I feel like on the whole, this isn't every man, but I feel like men are more observable. Like if a man is struggling, I feel like we can kind of, well, maybe I shouldn't say a man, maybe I should say a boy. If a boy is struggling, we can see his struggle. There is a tell. It's obvious that something is going on most of the time. But the girl, could be facing the right way in class with a pen in her hand, looking like she's totally doing the thing. And if the teacher says, do you understand? She'll be like, yeah. And they'll be like, are you okay? Yeah. Not okay, doesn't understand, but still, and, yeah.
Yeah, the teacher may not even worry about asking because, well, obviously she's looking right at me. She's taking notes. And one of the physicians in this area whose area of practice was in ADHD recorded some teenagers talking about their experiences. Mm-hmm. And he asked the girls, would a teacher know that you're thinking about something else or not paying attention? And they said, no, I'm not stupid. I'm going to be looking at her.
Yeah.
And boys, that doesn't even cross the radar. They're going to be talking with someone or fussing with someone, not even thinking, oh, I've got to look like I'm paying attention. Mm-hmm. And so boys get noticed right there. Either or their behaviors do, and girls are trying to fit in and be proper and look like they're paying attention, but their thoughts are somewhere else. But I think for so many of us, us with ADHD, that doesn't occur to us that other people aren't doing that.
I know.
You aren't thinking about a couple other things at the same time. You know, your mind needs to be running on at least 3 or 4 channels, even if you're at a lecture or in class.
And I think
the concept for me to think you're only thinking about one thing is as hard to understand as someone who is neurotypical thinking you're trying to think about 3 things at once. And I'd say 3. I'm lucky.
That's a quiet moment.
That's right.
And I think because we don't talk to one another about, like, we imagine when I say I'm thinking about and you say I'm thinking about, that is exactly the same thing. Or if we say I'm really busy and you say you're really busy, that's the same thing. Like, you know, we don't really, or certainly women don't, you know, like they want to pull it off. They want to, and there will be a cost, and it will be a cost to them, largely of their lack of downtime. And probably it's cost them more money because they've probably stuffed up somewhere along the way and, I don't know, parked in the wrong place to get the thing in time and got a ticket and so on and so on. But we don't want to reveal the cost. That seems worse than...
And you don't want to reveal it. And I think sometimes the cost is expected. And just the other day, talking to a woman whose daughter is getting married in end of July, I think. And she's concerned about, I've got to declutter some things in the house, whatever. And she said, and my husband volunteered our home for a wedding in May. I said, so of course he's doing all the preparation, right? She said, well, with the yard, yes. And admittedly, I planned out a very complex yard and design and everything. And he takes great care of that. But the expectation is that I, as a woman, I'm the one who has to take care of the house and how the house looks. And if someone comes over and thinks, oh boy, this is really kind of junky, it reflects on me, not on us as a couple or anything else. That's
true. It's true.
And so that's the cost of even just thinking she has to is a cost, because that's what someone has termed a micro moment of shame.
Absolutely.
Thinking I need to do this. And every time she goes through that room, oh yeah, I was going to do that. But you didn't yet, did you? You aren't good enough. You aren't keeping up.
And
that's, I haven't quite figured out how we counter that other than to recognize it, name it.
Yeah. And I don't know, maybe only ADHD people don't notice this stuff, but like no one, like I don't ever go to anyone else's house and like run my finger across their skirting board to see if it's dusty. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
I mean, even in the most chaotic ADHD households, still feel confident like it would be hygienic. I do feel like we can manage hygiene, you know, like if people care about you and, you know, like I don't go into other people's houses and go, well, Ma, you didn't do the dishes before I came. Clearly you don't care about me. But somehow I can't like put that idea down when they're coming to my house.
Yeah.
You know, like it's crazy, isn't it? What we take
notice
on.
and don't. I was at someone's house for an occasion. I think it was something having to do with a school function for kids and parents gathering at their homes. And I was talking to someone, the hostess came up and was talking to us, and she looked up and there was a row of 4 large vases. But I mean, the vase with glass was like this all along this top bookcase. And she looked up and turned one about 1/4 of an inch.
Oh, Lord.
Because it wasn't
quite in line.
It needed to be this. And I thought, okay, boy, that's, and then I had to look at myself and I'll look at a picture and think, that edge needs to be just a little bit up.
Yeah. And I wonder how long it'll take you to do that.
That's something I noticed. I don't worry about the vases in the house, but pictures
Isn't
on the
it
wall.
funny though, like the things that we take on our shoulders, and you know, we would never give those things to someone else and be like, oh, you know, you're not a proper woman if you don't vacuum every day or whatever. I will say, actually, you know, you said what's the cure? Let's say, I'm not saying it is exactly a cure, but I can tell you what has really, really helped me. And that is keeping company with other women with ADHD. You know, like when I stopped comparing myself.
People who understand. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, then being in the company of other women with ADHD is a very funny, forgiving place. And also it's a place where you get great hacks, like great, you know, like there are ideas.
Yes.
You know, there are really good ideas here to share with one another. And that's something that I am sort of nurturing a community where I live of ADHD women. We gather a couple of times a month for a meal, and we have a coffee morning and a learning session.
Yeah, great.
Because I just think we have so much to give one another. And I think I may have weeded out all the neurotypicals of my life. I think I've just, you know, shed them, David. I've just shed them. You know, they're still alive. They're in the world, but I just don't. But then
it's nice to see you every once in a while. But I really want to.
Not my people. If people straighten vases, I'm like, oh, we're not going to be great friends. I mean, we're not going to be enemies either. But you know, we're not going to be.
It's not going to be that real close bond.
We're not. No, and that's okay. That's okay. I don't need to be close to everyone, and I don't need everyone to like me. I don't. I just need to be in the company of people
who do accept you.
Yeah, that's it.
For being you. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you'd mentioned in some of our communication before this that you're looking at a program of mentoring younger women or girls so that they have that example that it's okay to be this way.
Absolutely.
And so there is support out there, which I think is great.
Yeah. So I've been going into schools for about five years now, where I'm working one-to-one with girls that are diagnosed or on the pathway, and they obviously the many faces of ADHD. They're not all girls like me, as in like the kind of ones holding it all in. Some of the girls I work with are letting it all hang out, and you know, they're pushing it out there for everyone to see. But the one piece of feedback I consistently get, actually this is probably from every woman I work with, whatever age they are, but the one thing they will always say is, oh my gosh, you get it. Like they're so amazed that someone else kind of knows it. Like sometimes, you know, I know before they tell me, you know, and because I am that, you know, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that they are amazed. And with the girls, I always say to them, if it feels hard here, that's because it is really hard. like it's really hard for us to be here. It's
Yeah.
not about your decision not to try. This isn't because you don't care. This isn't because you're stupid. This is because this place is not made for you. And they're trying to make you do it as if it is. That's really, really
Trying to,
hard.
yeah, make you do it that way.
Yeah, that's the
Exactly.
thing. You have to, there's one size fits all, except it doesn't. So
Hmm.
I've been doing this in three schools. Yeah, three schools locally to me. It's a bit of a patchy thing because the school has to pay for it, and schools are really struggling. So, and also there's only at this time it's only me. But my hope is that I will get some funding to train. So I lean on my professional background of being a teacher, and I had many pastoral roles in my teaching
Sure.
career. And I feel like I don't know, I like teenagers. I get them. They are my
Bless you.
people.
Bless you.
Well, yeah, someone has to like them, right? um, anyway, but what I think that the piece for me that's magic is the lived experience, is that I can bring my lived experience to them and say
Hmm.
that this was me, here I was, and I felt these things too, and and look where I am now, where I am where I really want to be. I was able to get, like this life didn't happen to me. I made, I've curated it, I've created it, I've worked hard, and I've succeeded. And there's no reason why you can't do that. And I think it's really important that they see positive role models of women that have grown into the women that they wanted to be. And that also it's actually very healing for a woman to go back.
Yeah.
Do
And
you know
being
what I
able
mean?
to
It's
offer
it's
that.
it's a
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
beautiful
Hmm.
relationship in a way. So I'm trying to get some funding so I can train women with. I would like them to have an accredited qualification because obviously they don't all have teaching backgrounds. So to have
Right.
this
Right.
thing to kind of set them up. That's my hope. So that's what I'm working towards.
Right.
That's my hope. And I was at the conference in Baltimore at the end of November, and
November.
there was
Hmm.
I think they called it the State of Women Town Hall event, something like that. And in the room, they had a woman like expert in ADHD from representing every like age. So there was a woman in her 20s, a woman in her 30s. I think it went up to a woman in her 80s. It was incredible. Linda was on there. Linda was one of the women.
Not in the 80s. I know,
No,
Linda.
definitely not there. No, she wasn't the oldest by a long shot, Linda. Don't worry. Sorry, I didn't mean to imply. But she was a more senior, more wise
Mhm.
member of the panel. Anyway, the woman that facilitated it, I think, is called Michelle Price, and she asked kind of three questions, basically. Like what do we want to stop? What do we want to see more of? And what do we, where do we think this needs to go for us now? So the panel answered, and then the audience,
Yeah.
gave their feedback, and it was really very fascinating and very also encouraging and empowering. And I did stand up in that session and say that I was going to do this. I will
Good for
train
you.
these women. It will happen, and I will be able to evidence
Mhm.
the impact, because I just think
Sure.
if a girl's well-being can be taken care of, then the other things can fall into place. She will attend school more. She will achieve better. She will
Mhm.
feel better about herself. She'll have
Yeah.
higher
She can
self-esteem.
feel comfortable
Yeah,
about herself. And
yeah. And I
yes,
think having that older lived experience, a
mhm.
relationship like that, where I'm not mum, I'm not teacher, I'm their person, that I think that can be really,
Yeah,
really magic.
absolutely.
So
And
yes,
the,
that's the plan anyway. But if anyone's listening that'd like to fund me, so that would be smashing. I definitely would take any contribution. I'm finding it difficult to get funding because
I'm
I
I'm
don't even know
sure.
why. I'm not a bid writer, I think is the problem. You have to,
That,
yeah, I think this is,
that
I think
may be
people
one
actually
of
would,
those things we aren't so good at with ADD.
yeah,
We've
I'm
got the
not so
ideas,
great.
and
So,
the
um,
mechanics are tougher. Well,
yeah,
one of the things I think particularly important in having a woman mentoring a girl and being able to say, yes, I know how it feels, is that those feelings also, and being able to regulate, emotional regulate, and having the ups and downs is unique for women because there's estrogen, and
yeah,
estrogen varies each month and up and down. And when it's on the downside, estrogen helps dopamine work better. And when that estrogen support isn't there, um, then medication, if one's choosing to do that, isn't going to be able to support the dopamine
yeah,
function as
exactly.
well.
And you
And certainly,
mentioned
if there's
earlier,
no medication, then there isn't much support for the
no,
dopamine.
and that is a very difficult situation for a girl or woman to be in because it's so undermining. And if you don't know that's what's happening, then all of
Mm-hmm.
the things we've talked about till now, it's like you've just turned them up to the maximum volume for a few days of telling myself how utterly useless I am and I really need to try harder and oh my God, like everyone else is succeeding, how it would be. But then of course estrogen rises again. And then we're like, oh, okay, it's not so bad now. Maybe I'm okay. Only to have it happen on repeat. And of course, because it would, let's say, if you're observing us, we would look inconsistent. We're going to hear from our parents and teachers, let's say, you could do this last week, Pippa. What's wrong with you?
Yes, how
And
come you're
indeed, this
so
is going to,
flighty? And
yeah, I'm
yeah,
going to think, yeah, you're right. I could do this last week. What is wrong with me? I'm just rubbish.
yeah, what's mm-hmm.
Yeah.
and
Um, yeah, and
and that
I think you mentioned earlier about I don't know if we were recording or it was our pre-chat. I can't remember, but you were saying that that for a woman that you treated by increasing her dose at that
yes,
time. That,
and this was something that I learned from her because she said, it just wasn't working. So I hope it's okay. But I took an extra 5 milligrams, and
yeah,
that really made a difference that week.
yeah. So
And
I
so
understand that
she
that's
realized, boy,
caused.
this was a repeating pattern. So, okay, I'm asking, do you need some more
Mm,
medication for that week? So build that into the prescription somehow.
yeah, and that I believe that I don't know if this is a term in America, but situational medication. So the dose is, let's say, it is stable, but it would change to try and compensate for the drop of estrogen. Maybe it's not going to be perfect, but Lord
No,
above,
no, and
wouldn't you
it's
give her a chance? You
right,
know.
right. And
Um,
there's all kinds of then things to work through. Well, there's that little bit more, it may help with the focus, but does she feel more anxious because of the effect of the medication
yeah, there's a
and
lot of
how
things.
to balance all that? And that's
Yeah.
part of the puzzle for the clinician to
It is.
sort through and see what the options are. And the woman and her clinician need to work together as far as hey, this is what I'm seeing. Okay, what are the options?
Yeah.
Clinician, these are the options. What sounds good to you, and how can we try it?
I'm always telling
And
women and girls to go easy on themselves that week, like track your cycle, know when it's coming, and dial it right down. These are not the days for the parties. These are not the days for I don't know, big trips to, into London and, great adventures. These are days for pajamas. These are days for just, taking it easy and
it's
being,
okay to take it easy.
yeah, buy some ready meals, like, don't, or get takeaway.
Yes,
Don't, like just dial it
figure
down.
that you have to.
Or, yeah, or get
And
someone else to cook for you. How about that? That's a better one. Get someone else to cook for you. That's better than getting
yes,
takeaway. Yeah.
one of the, and I certainly it hadn't occurred to me or realized almost the opposite side of that. And Lotta Skoglund in her webinar for Attitude Magazine back in January was the emotional lives of girls with ADHD. And she pointed out in that monthly cycle, in the middle of the cycle, at the time of ovulation, the estrogen levels rise higher
Yeah.
than any other times.
Yeah.
And for girls with the hyperactive, impulsive type of ADD, that's the highest risk time for them because they become more impulsive. Hey, I'm feeling great.
Yeah. Let's do
And
it.
so they can get
Yeah.
excited about being on the cheer team, or they may say, sure, I'll go try smoking some of that or drinking, or how
Yeah.
fast can I get this car to go? So you
Yeah.
get into risky behaviors in that time of the
Mm.
cycle. And 2 weeks later, they may think, what on earth?
What was I
I'm just,
doing?
I'm a bad
Yeah.
person because I'm doing these. So that it's a
Yeah.
different side
And
effects.
how awful for that to sit with you. And because I suppose, especially if you are still a girl, maybe you don't want your parents to know what you've been doing. So it's all secret, it's all inside. And then you're telling yourself, oh my gosh, I'm such a moral failure, as well as everything else, like yeah. And it is very troubling. And I think it's so important. I don't like to be talking about all of our vulnerabilities and the dangers, I suppose. But it is a fact that people with ADHD are not expected to live as long. Girls are more likely to have unplanned pregnancies, sexually transmitted diseases, underachieve, have eating disorders, suicidal ideation, depression, anxiety. Like, it's a really long list of things that you don't want anyone
Yes.
you love
Yeah,
to be
girls and
vulnerable.
boys. Exactly.
Yeah. And it's true across the board, right? I don't know. I don't really understand why, it's certainly in this country, when you are diagnosed, so like you get your diagnostic report, which explains how you hit the criteria, but no one sort of tacks on the end, by the way, you know, as a parent, it would be a good idea for you to be aware that all of these things, right? Like, I'm not saying that means definitely they're not going to happen, but if my mother knew, for example, that I was more likely to have an eating disorder than a typically developed girl, then surely she would be keeping a bit more of an eye on my eating behavior and give me more support around that. And we would talk about that type of thing more. I know I could still have an eating disorder, but like, it might be spotted faster. I might get the help I needed quicker. Um,
And
so it's,
and
yeah,
and that's where,
I do
as
worry.
a parent, um, that's where the parent, whether she or they, including fathers in there,
Mm.
um, realize they could use some coaching help. That none
Yeah.
of us as parents, there's no manual they give you as you're leaving the
No, it's only
hospital.
right.
And,
Yeah.
um, and parenting is all ad lib, but nobody tells you that.
No, no, they
And
don't.
so, how to talk with your child about eating disorder, or being able to accept that, maybe it's a good idea if we get some other help and someone who knows about that. Being able to bring up that conversation, that's where some parent coaching can help.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of
Doing that
parents
early.
feel like, I think a lot of parents maybe feel a bit of shame themselves around,
Oh yeah.
like, they didn't, first of all, maybe they didn't know when they feel like they should have known. I don't know why they should
Mhm.
have, but we often tell ourselves, oh, I should have known. So there's that. And then there's also, like, some of this very observable behavior can be quite difficult in a public situation, and you feel like all eyes are on you and people are condemning you, and you're
Yes, you're
like, oh my
supposed to be able to
gosh,
control your child.
yeah, I'm
Yeah.
such a failure, right? I did try and flip it on my head with my son, and I used to try to tell myself, they're looking at you in admiration, Pippa. They are looking at you and they are admiring your persistence and your poise in dealing with this very difficult situation. That's what I would say to myself.
Yeah.
And I'd scurry away and hide and not go out again.
Yes. Yes. I'm I'm not coming back to this store ever again.
Yeah, that's it.
There's all
This is
those
off my
critical
list.
people there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the lived experience, well, this is true in so many of all situations, but the lived experience of women needs to be out there more, needs to be spoken about, talked about, because so
Definitely.
much of the ADHD focus, if you'll forgive the pun, back in the 1990s was, oh, there's this problem with hyperactive boys,
Mm.
and girls were a tomboy. They
Yeah.
weren't being hyperactive, or the girls were the inattentive type, so they were quiet and trying to fit in. And well, girls don't have ADD, boys do, and so
Yeah.
that's the whole start of things were what's the male experience with it, and
Mm.
unfortunately, most clinicians were males that were doing that,
Yeah.
and finally, there are more women that are up to being psychologists, MD, PhD researchers doing research on that.
There
But
are
it's been,
amazing women doing shining
oh
such a
yes,
bright light now. I feel so grateful to have like come in like under them, if that makes sense. Like people like Sari Solden, Ellen Lippman, Patricia Nadu. I'm not sure if that's how you say her name, but you know who I mean, I'm
Kathleen
sure.
Nadeau and Patricia Quinn.
Yeah. Oh yeah, Patricia Quinn and Ellen Lippman. These are remarkable women who've been in, really, really trying to shine a light for probably decades. And
Yes, definitely
finally,
decades.
yeah. And
It's
also,
getting there.
Stephen Hinshaw has done some excellent work
Mm-hmm.
following girls through the, longitude.
Longitudinal
Thank you.
studies. Yeah, yeah.
Those
Yes, he's
studies.
definitely
Yeah,
contributed a
like
lot on that.
thank goodness, because we need to know these things, and get it out there. I think one of the women I mentioned might have been the author of an article. I still send it to clients now. It's quite old, and it's called The Secret Life of Girls with ADHD. It's just a magazine article, but it
Mm.
just really gets under the skin of what it is to live, like what's going on
What's
internally.
the internal?
Yeah, it really does. And I mean, and Lotta's work at the moment is incredible. And I'm so grateful to Sandra Cooge for her research because,
Oh, yes,
yeah,
absolutely.
like incredible
And
work on the impact of hormonal changes across the lifespan, and also, the monthly
monthly
cycle.
cycle. Another
Yeah.
person who is, I think, another one of the women who's a pioneer in looking at women ADD, the lived experience, is Sari Solden.
Mm.
A number of years ago, and I'm going to say it's at least 20, probably more, in her journeys through adulthood, ADD adulthood, and now came out with a revised edition of that, which is she looks at three journeys we take from we have this diagnosis and what's that like to adapt to, and then we're flailing around trying to figure out how to deal with it. Then hopefully we come to, okay, this is how I can, and I accept that I have it, and this is what I can do with it. So reflections on that along the way is the book she wrote, but out of her own experience. So it's that
Mm.
lived experience. And I think it can be helpful to do that. And I think of that, yeah, boy, that would be a good idea. And I read through the book and it's okay, now take a pause and reflect on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll get to that. What else does it say?
Yeah. You know,
And
I struggle to read books like to sit and read. So I listen to a lot of books, and sometimes I also have them in front of me, depending on what book it
excellent.
is. But Sari Solden wrote a book with Michelle Frank, and it's called I want to say like the Radical Guide to for Women with ADHD. It's something like that, and it's written workbook style. But that is the first book I had read in such a long time that I could not put down. And I felt like she was talking to me. I felt so seen in that book because the two authors, Michelle and Sari, both have ADHD. And I was like, oh my gosh, I am known. Like this is my voice. This is my experience. And I recommend it to all my clients. Whatever age or stage they are, like, even if they're in their like 60s or in their 20s. I'm not going to lie, I didn't fill in the workbook part either because I was like, no, what's next?
You thought about it.
I have used it with women that I work with as like kind of a book group thing, like we read a bit and then we talk about it, read a bit, then we talk about it. And it has been so helpful because the premise is around accepting who you actually are and like, leaving the woman you thought you should be somewhere else, parking her up somewhere and saying goodbye. Accepting this woman that you were made to be and loving her, loving that woman.
Nurturing her and supporting her.
That's the thing. That's the magic, I think, that if we can get a piece of that, and that's really healing.
That would be valuable for men as well.
Yeah.
But we aren't geared as much for connection and sitting down, and maybe we're more open in behaviors, but really secretive about what I'm ashamed of, and certainly talk about it with somebody.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe a therapist who's not going to tell anybody else, but I'm not going to sit in a group of guys and talk about this. And yet, like with anyone else, getting it out there and realizing, oh, this is a shared experience. That can be a real, a powerful thing.
Yeah, I think
so. There are a lot of fronts to move on.
There are some really great men, younger men on social media now who I feel like maybe they are, maybe starting to, what's the word? Like inspire these conversations amongst other men, like they are sharing their own feelings, let's say, and experience openly. And there's someone called Alex Partridge here in the UK. I think he has a podcast called ADHD Chatter. And the thing that I really love about him is every now and then he does like this lovely shout out to the late diagnosed women out there. And he says things like, you are enough. You always were. It's very affirming. But he really does, he's had some difficult times and he does talk about them. And I hope that makes men feel a bit safer to, sorry, my dog's being annoying. Go on, keep going. Still being annoying.
That it's okay for men to talk about.
Yeah. And I had an experience recently. Someone I know is a man who has ADHD, but he has a gambling addiction. And I attended a meeting with him, and it was all male. And they were every age and stage, and there were about 15 of them in this room. And I was blown away by their utter honesty and bearing their very difficult stuff, the things that they said they were not proud of, but not only that they would bear it to one another, but then the group would offer kindness and support and no judgment. But I was thinking, is this what it is? Do men have to have, like, let's say, hit the hard deck? Is that what has to happen in order for them to bear their?
And I think that wake up call helps, whether men or women. I think maybe, and I hadn't thought about that specifically, whether men need to be hit over the head or the 2x4 in the face and, oh yeah, this gambling problem, there's a lot more to it than just I'm spending money and that's problem for my family. There's a lot of unraveling to do. And I've got to cut short our wonderful discussion because we're coming up to time.
No worries.
I'm sure anyone listening would have no problem at all figuring out that both of us have ADHD because
Yeah.
we've gone in so many different directions. And I've thoroughly enjoyed it.
Me too. It's been really great to meet you.
If it looks like I'm not paying attention to those of you watching, it's because I'm scribbling notes here and there because I get ideas that come up and spin off. And, oh, yeah, I want to remember to read that book and try to connect this person and that person.
Yeah.
So it's just a wonderful experience talking with you, Pippa. And so I'm so glad we had a chance to put this together.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It was really lovely talking to you. And I think, yeah, like you say, the listeners will be in no doubt that we have lived experience.
Yes. And thank you, all my listeners here on ADHD Focus. My guest today has been Pippa Simu, who is a coaching psychologist in Great Britain. And if you're over there in London and you need some help and support, I'm sure she would love to stop at the pub with you, or maybe even go to an Arsenal game or watch an Arsenal football match.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, look me up if you're ever over. Anybody, I'll if I'm around, I'll come say hello.
And as you've heard, we've touched on all kinds of things about shame and the amount of shame a woman may feel because of those societal roles that are laid upon women. And I'll leave with one thing that is in what I think one of the first real explanations of how shame works, and that's Brene Brown's book, Daring Greatly. And she had interviewed 1,000 women on shame and had been giving a talk about that. And a man came up and asked if she had done the same with men. And she said, no, she hadn't. And he said, how convenient, and turned to leave. And that grabbed her attention. Mm-hmm. And she said, what do you mean? He said, you have no idea what men were ashamed of. You have no idea. And it's not the same thing. And I think the more we can talk about how shame affects all of us.
Absolutely. Yeah. I always say to my group of ladies, like, shame dies when we share our stories in safe spaces.
Exactly.
That's what it is. And I hope that's something that people listening could take away, that they would find a safe space to speak their truth, to tell it like it is, to bear it.
Absolutely.
It loses its power if it's out there.
Yeah. In a place where there's not going to be judgment. You can be vulnerable. So thank you, all the listeners of ADHD Focus. This is Dr. David Pomeroy, your host, and I look forward to talking with you more.